Hello, I'm Mark Tupper from the Herald and Review. I'm sorry for a little bit of a late start. They decided that Brad Underwood, Illinois basketball coach, would be available for some media stuff this afternoon at 2, so I shot over there and talked to Brad, and then came back, and it was raining like crazy and blowing, and people had to pull off the road, and so it took a little longer to get back than I thought that it would, but it was worth the drive over. Brad Underwood was really good, so I'm going to tell you about some of the things he said, and then I'll get to a couple of the questions that I've got from people too. First of all, the non-conference portion of the schedule is out, and Brad talked about it. Some of this stuff is out of his control. Obviously, when they play an ACC Big Ten Challenge game, he's got no control over that. And this Gavitt games, he's got no control over that. And they have a couple of games that they had agreed to previously. But he said that he really wants to upgrade the schedule. He wants to play more good teams. I think fans will like that, because that's what I've been hearing from fans for years, is let's play more good teams. He added UNLV. They will play them this year on December 9th out in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand. Their arena is being occupied by Rodeo at that time, and then UNLV will return that game to the State Farm Center the following season. So that will be a good one for fans to have the next year. Of course, you may have heard that they're going to play New Mexico State at the United Center. That is going to be a kind of a tribute to Lou Henson game. Lou, of course, coached New Mexico State and Illinois both into the Final Four. That game will be Saturday, December 16th, up at the United Center. And then the following Saturday, December 23rd, the day before Christmas Eve, is the date for the bragging rights game, Illinois against Missouri, at the Scott Trade Center down in St. Louis. They earlier it was announced they're going to play DePaul in that Gavitt games. It's been forever since they played DePaul in a game, so that's a good one too. They're going to go out to Wake Forest and play their ACC Big Ten Challenge game. He added Austin Peay, that's coached by a friend of his. So anyhow, there's some stuff there, and then they're going to play apparently a couple of Big Ten games in December, and jumpstart that schedule prior to the first of the year. And so anyhow, that's what he had to say about that. His message, there was a couple of them today. One, they're just wrapping up what he called a great summer, and he said not a good summer, a great summer. Really loves the buy-in from the guys, loves these guys. He said, I like the personality of our players. He said they worked so hard in the weight room. They have gotten stronger and bigger. They're not in as good a condition as they need to be. Everybody's talking about how fast we like to play, but to play that fast, you've got to be in great condition. So that is still being worked on by Adam Fletcher, their strength and conditioning coach. But in talking to some other people who are over there within the program who see practices all the time, the message I got was that Brad's practices are so intense. He really controls practice and drives them. And they both said, these two people I talked to both said, I know everybody's talking about his offense, because people got all worked up about the fact that they led the nation in points scored in the first 7 seconds of a possession. They both said this will be a defensive team, that this will be a really good defensive team. And I did ask Brad about that, and he said we haven't done much except for just basic fundamental stuff, defensive stance, guarding the ball, that kind of thing. But he said that's to come, and that will happen as soon as they get rolling, either later in August or the 1st of September. But I was kind of excited to hear him talk about that, and about the fact that he thinks that they will be a really good defensive team. So when I got there a little bit early. There's one guy in the gym shooting around, and that was D. Brown. And D was with his 14-year-old son, Darian, and Darian's got some talent. He's going to be a high school freshman up in the Chicago area, and D was shooting jump shots and looking good, and it was fun to watch him shoot. He and his son really worked themselves up into a pretty good sweat. So that was fun talking to Brad about the summer and what they've done there, and hearing his optimism very clear in his voice. He he's getting ready to go to the Cayman Islands for 6 days. This is the period now where they have a little bit of vacation time where there's no recruiting responsibilities and so forth. But he thinks they're in great shape right now in terms of recruiting for the 18 class. They've obviously offered a lot of people. He said we've done a great job of connecting with people. But he said, it's your hardest recruiting class, the first one after you've been hired, because you're making up so much ground. You're recruiting kids that have been recruited by other schools for 3 years or 2 years, so they have a head start in terms of time and relationships. And he said, we've done everything we can to make up that ground. I feel good about who we're recruiting. I feel good about who we're in on. He said, but you're going to get judged on what you do in the final third of that recruiting effort, and that's in closing on these kids and getting some commitment. So that's kind of where they are right now. A couple of questions submitted to me regarding Illinois football. I wrote a column about Chase Crouch being the leader of this football team. He's the designated starting quarterback, and about how it's an unusual dynamic to be the leader and also very inexperienced. Usually the guy who's been declared the team leader is a guy who has a pretty good body of work and proven production. And Chase has one start and one relief appearance. And that is a little bit scary, frankly, because I can understand when you're around him, you can see why he's a natural leader, and I can understand that guys gravitate to him. That part I have no problem understanding. But when you don't have a proven body of work to go with it, you wonder how quickly guys would pull off of you if you had 3 interceptions and lost in the first game, if you had 3 interceptions and a lost fumble, and it looked like you hadn't performed well in the second game. At some point, your dazzling personality fails to be enough, and so that will be on Chase to try to build up some solid positive play early to go with the fact that these kids just kind of like him and like following him. And then I got a question about Larry Boyd, because I mentioned that he had started the first session of training camp as a starting offensive tackle. He's a true freshman from St. Louis. He's huge, 6'6", 360 pounds. Listen, they just love this kid, and they're going to give him a chance. And he may play himself out of it, or he may play himself into it. But if he ended up being a 4-year starter for them, that'd be fine with them. He is a special-looking kid. Illinois hadn't had these massive linemen like this. This looks like a kid out of the Wisconsin program that they've built their running game around for all this time. And so he's out there. He looks like he's not overwhelmed by it. And we'll see where he goes. Tomorrow will be the first day in full pads as they get going there. So I guess that's all for today. We'll leave it at that. But the football stuff was interesting. I'll be writing about it, of course, in the next few days. You can follow that on our website, or you can follow me on Twitter at @MarkTupper. And we'll have this posted for you on the Herald and View website also, if you want to check it at a later date, or if you couldn't get to it and want to tell friends that it's over there, they can pop it up. We'll get it up as soon as we can. So thank you very much, and we'll talk to you next Thursday at 3:30.